Ideally, what we would like to have would be an oral insulin. That would be the ideal, because then you don't want someone taking an injection every day. And with pills, we know you can have them you can keep them at room temperature. Because think of someone who lives in the rural areas, who might not have a fridge, but they have diabetes. And when the nurse gives them the insulin and says you need to keep it in the fridge, most of them do agree and say, yes, I will keep it in the fridge, because they are afraid if they say no, I don't have a fridge, they might not be given the drug.
Welcome to Let's Talk Science with Thuli. I'm so glad to be back with you wherever you're watching from or wherever you're listening from. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as you know, at Let's Talk Science with Thuli, we try to bring science to you, the people. And really what we want to find out is, what are these people doing? Why are they doing it? And how does it affect you? And how does it affect me and the general public and the population and the world alike? And today I'm very excited to have a former colleague who I last saw in France, I think in 2015. It's been such a long time, but I'm so happy to have in my home and hosting today, who I call Miss B, but is now Dr. Bathabile Ramalapa. Thank you so much for coming to my home.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here.
It's been long, eh?
It has been long. It has. Yeah, the last time we saw each other, I was living in France and you came there for a conference.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That was the last time I saw you. And ever since I have been back, you have not invited me to your home. So I'm excited that
Sure I did.
eventually you did.
I invite everyone to my home. I must have. And this is now 2 children later.
Yeah, maybe I was too busy having children. Because then when you're pregnant, you don't want to see people. Then when you're breastfeeding, then you don't feel like you look good enough to be out in public, and then you get pregnant again, and then so it's been.
And then COVID happens.
And then COVID happens, yeah.
All right, so you back now at the CSIR.
Yes, so I was working for the CSIR before I left, and then I took sabbatical leave for 4 years. Went to France to do a PhD, went to Belgium to do a PhD, and came back.
So it's Doctor All Squared. It's a double PhD.
I don't know. Sometimes it really just feels like one PhD because, it was done concurrently. So it doesn't really feel like I went through the journey of doing 2 PhDs.
Yeah.
It's just that, at some point it became two PhDs.
Oh, I see. I see. But the work was related.
The work was related. It's just that I had to put together a very huge thesis so that it could cover the requirements for both a PhD in chemistry and a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences.
Oh, I see. So you didn't write 2
No,
theses.
I didn't write 2 theses. It was one thesis that covered
both.
the requirements for both.
Yeah, and that was drug delivery then.
Yes. So for the pharmaceutical sciences, it was drug delivery, and for the it was chemistry, but more biochemistry. Okay. So it was protein engineering.
So more formulation, not formulation per se.
So for the PhD in chemistry, mostly biochemistry, it was protein engineering. So we engineered a protein, and then when we had the protein, we thought, what can we use it for? And then we did it for application in bone regeneration.
Oh, dope.
So then I did formulation, and then that became the PhD in pharmaceutical sciences.
Ah, dope. Okay. And then you're back now at the CSIR, and what's cooking there?
So now at the CSIR, I do drug delivery. I don't think I have the energy to engineer proteins from the beginning and do drug delivery. So I work in collaboration with people that make molecules, small molecules or proteins that they believe can have health applications, and then I do the drug delivery.
What kind of health applications do protein have?
So the proteins that I work on, like I said, I work on both small molecules and proteins. So I've been working on proteins like your trastuzumab, which has breast cancer applications, and then the long-standing insulin, which has diabetes applications.
So it's anti-diabetes or anti. All right. And
cancer.
Specifically now, what are you working on? Those
are the two that I'm working on, and I also work on small molecules. So I'm also working on anti-malaria formulations.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So we take existing drugs that are already there. So we don't do drug discovery.
Yeah.
So we take existing drugs that are already there, but they may have problems in absorption or bioavailability, or they may have very toxic side effects.
Okay.
And then we try and make them more patient compliant. So meaning that we try and get them to have higher absorption, high bioavailability, so that we reduce the side effects and possibly reduce the dose.
Okay, let's move back a little bit. So maybe if we stick to one, let's talk about anti-malaria.
Yes.
Right? Let's talk about anti-malaria. So there's currently drugs right now for malaria that are on the market. And when you say what would be the challenges with perhaps a malaria drug? So you talk about bioavailability. What does that mean?
Okay, so there are two things when it comes to drugs, the absorption and the bioavailability, and they somehow relate. So absorption is that when you have a drug, how does the body take it?
Okay.
Will it easily take it in, or will it be, will it take in some of it and then see the rest as being toxic? So at what concentration will your body then take the drug?
Okay.
And so absorption relates to that. So when you take a drug, some of it you'll have to take a high dose for you to only get for your body to only take in some of it.
Okay.
Some of it you can take. For example, let's say you'll take 50 milligram of the drug, but you'll only use 10 milligram of it.
Okay.
Some of it you'll take the 10 milligram, and all of the 10 milligram will be used.
Okay.
So you won't need to take in excess of the drug. So that's what we talk about when we talk about absorption. And then there's the bioavailability. If you're taking 50 milligram of the drug, how much of it will be available to your body to do what it needs to do to cure you?
Okay.
So some of it, you take 50 milligram, it goes through the liver then takes away the excess, maybe 40 milligram, and you're left with 10 milligram.
Is that the fate of a drug? Are we talking now about tablets? So
Yes.
if I take it goes down my throat and it goes to the liver.
Yes.
Is that the fate of the drug? And
yes,
then from
that's
the liver,
the fate of most drugs.
Most
yes.
drugs.
And then once it gets to the liver, some of it may be then taken out of the body, and then you're only left with a little to do the work. And then that's why you have to take as many pills as possible to get the right concentration that will be able to cure it, because the liver clears some of it.
And where does it go?
And that's when we now talk about toxic side effects, because some of it will then just go into your bloodstream.
Okay.
And then elicit a response from your body. And that response sometimes may not be positive. So it may cause you to have nausea. It may cause you to get dizzy. It may, depending on what toxic side effects you have. So you see the little pamphlets that they put in the drug sometimes will say, this drug will cause drowsiness, it will cause nausea, diarrhea.
It's because my body is responding to the excess amount that is doing stuff it has no business doing.
That's right. So what we do with drugs is we try and make sure that most of the drug that you take will only go to the place where it needs to go.
All right.
and will only do what it needs to do. So we try and avoid the excess that can then get into the bloodstream and cause the toxic side effects.
So in the case of, actually I think I want us to talk about diabetes because it affects a lot of people. So in the case of diabetes, if I'm taking a drug, where do I want it to go? And with the delivery process that you guys are working on, how do you then get it there?
Okay, so like I said, with delivery systems, we try and do different things, right? So with insulin, because we know that, for example, protein drugs, they are not stable. You know, they normally require cold chain storage. They have to be delivered in cold chain. You have to keep them in the fridge if you are someone that's taking insulin every day, and it has to be given by injection. So there are different challenges that, in terms of the South African landscape, in terms of protein drugs like insulin, that we face and that we would like to be solved. So we take it step by step. Ideally, what we would like to have would be an oral insulin. That would be the ideal, because then you don't want someone taking an injection every day. And with pills, we know you can have them you can keep them at room temperature. Because think of someone who lives in the rural areas, who might not have a fridge, but they have diabetes. And when the nurse gives them the insulin and says, you need to keep it in the fridge, most of them do agree and say, yes, I will keep it in the fridge, because they are afraid if they say, no, I don't have a fridge, they might not be given the drug. So then they take it and they keep it in room temperature. And then the drug degrades. And even though they are every day injecting the drug, nothing is happening. It's not working.
Because it's lost effectivity.
Yes.
Or efficacy.
That's true.
All right.
So we solve different problems with delivery system depending on what drug it is. So like I said, for some drugs it's because there's excess amount and we're trying to eliminate toxic side effects, and we're trying to get a low dosage, and we're trying to reduce the frequency, because if there's excess of the drug, if there's too little of the drug that you're getting, then as opposed to what the excess that's being cleared off by the body, then you have to take in more.
Okay.
But with insulin, then it's a different challenge that we are solving.
So you guys are trying to have it in a way that people can ingest it on their own as opposed to inject it.
Yes.
That's the first thing.
Yes. So I'm saying that is the ideal.
That's the ideal.
But for now, the challenge that we started solving is the cold chain storage.
Okay.
So we're trying to make insulin stable at room temperature.
Okay.
To make sure that even if you do have to inject it, but at least you don't have to keep it in the fridge. At least it can be given to someone who lives somewhere in the rural areas. At least even if we have to deliver it to places in the outskirts of the country, it doesn't have to be delivered at -20 temperature.
Even still as an injection, which would mean that the solution would then be packaged in a particular way that sort of protects it from that level of degradation outside of the fridge or whatever.
Yes.
So what is that? What are you guys? Yeah. So how are you guys packaging it then for that?
Okay, so this is a project that's ongoing.
Yeah.
So we haven't gotten yet
Yeah.
to the solution.
Yeah.
But that's what we're working towards.
So from a drug, so I'm trying to get at I mean, I do understand the process of research is such that we have some kind of an idea, or we have some kind of a problem like we have now, and then we've got the solution that we want to implement, right? And even though we're not there yet, we sort of like have you guys sort of have an idea of how you're wanting to package this, even if it's in the form of an injection still, but what would then make that insulin injection different to the kind of injections that we've got now that would make it last longer outside of a fridge, for example?
Yes, so that's what we talk about when we talk about delivery systems and making drugs more stable.
Yeah.
So then you would do something like put it in a polymeric system. So such as you protect the drug from the environment using a shell that's covering the drug. So you have the drug inside a shell. So all of the whatever degradation or whatever environmental effects that would have affected the drug when it was out in the open will then be handled or absorbed by the shell that's on the outside.
Okay.
And whatever shell you use should be a shell that ultimately is, I would say, biodegradable. So it means that when you put it in the body, it's supposed to be safe as well. And also hard enough to be able to handle the environmental effects or whatever harsh environmental effects that may come upon the shell, to be able to protect the drug that's inside.
And then when you say some kind of a polymeric shell, you're saying that this shell or this shell that we now put the medication in could very well be a polymer in nature.
Yes.
And what's a polymer?
So a polymer, well, the most, I think, general term of polymer that we see in the world is plastic.
Aha,
yes.
okay.
But in this, we have different polymers. So that polymer is not in a plastic sense, but it's something, it could be a polymer that you find in the environment. For example, we have a polymer called chitosan, which is really what you find, it's a crab shell.
Oh, crab shell.
Yeah, so crab shells are made
cool.
of a polymer called chitosan.
Okay.
And then when you take that shell and formulate it in a way where you can protect the drug using that, then the body identifies it as something that's not foreign.
Oh.
And it's able to take it in, and because it's a biological moiety. So the body doesn't recognize it as something that's foreign, and so it takes it up easily, and you then are able to deliver your drug using that.
And unlikely to experience adverse side effects from it.
Yes, from it.
That's so dope. I think that would be so cool. I mean, if there was an injection really that could, withstand some of the challenges that you've pointed out, would be able to treat more people, right? Would be able to treat more people, where, especially because we're quite a heavy country, so we are quite prone to diabetes.
To diabetes, yes.
What are the causes of diabetes? Why? And I know there's two types, right? There's type 1 and then there's type 2.
Type 2, yes.
And then,
okay, so there's the diabetes that is genetic. And then there's also diabetes that you get through lifestyle. I mean, previously, diseases like diabetes, cancer, were not quite prevalent in Africa, and they called them lifestyle diseases. Because people who were prone to living a certain lifestyle, like people who had, access to a lot of sugar, who had access to food with a lot of fat, who didn't do a lot of walking, and who were not physical, moving a lot,
burning calories,
were prone to that. We in Africa, even though you were not trying to exercise, but because you walked a lot, because you didn't had access to your own car, then you were not prone to such diseases. We ate a lot of fruits and vegetables because that's what we had in our garden.
We didn't have access
to food
shopping centers,
to burgers. You
and
didn't
to make
have
your own food.
the money to buy a burger.
Yeah.
So you got food from your garden.
Yes.
And that's why we were not prone to these kind of diseases. We did not have access to the lifestyle that could cause these kind of
globalization and industrialization has exposed us to.
And so now, because it's both an advantage and a disadvantage, right? It's a catch-22 situation. But now, because we have access to these things, now we are more prone. And I think quite sad is also that a lot of kids now are prone to diabetes, because we raise them on takeaway instead of cooking at home and buying fruits and vegetables,
Yeah.
so they are prone to these kind of diseases.
Because life is also now so much faster, and we've got so much access to things, and that's contributing to our health.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Miss B, I think the work that you guys are doing is important, and I know that the CSIR does quite a lot of work. It's quite an array of work that affects a lot of different areas of society to advance the agenda of healthy people, prosperous people, and etc., etc. So we didn't necessarily speak a lot about the malaria packaging or the packaging for the other sort of diseases that you guys are trying to deal with, but ideally, what's the overall point?
Okay, so the overall point, as I said, is to have really drugs that are safe for people to take. And drugs, I think when I look at the work that I do, I try to look at it in a South African and African landscape, right? As to when there's a drug manufactured for a certain disease, how will it best benefit the people of South Africa and Africa? In terms of the side effects, in terms of people being compliant to take the drug. If someone has to take a drug every day for 6 months, for example, when you have TB, will they take the drug? Will they have the means, in fact, to take the drug? Because some drugs you have to take with a full meal every day. Will that person have a full meal 3 times a day to be able to take the drug? So that's what we look at. And when we try and formulate a delivery system for a certain drug, we are trying to take away all the extras that need to come with the drug.
Oh, I see.
Like if you have to take a drug every day and it has to stay in the fridge and it has to be done by injection, will you be able, when a nurse shows you this is how you inject yourself, will you be able to do it?
To do that.
Will you be able to keep the drug in the fridge if you have to keep it every day? If it's a drug that they say to you, come to the hospital every day, this is just an example, or every 3 days, will you be able to travel to the clinic to take the drug every day? So we're trying to make drugs as patient-centered and accessible, ideally to just have health accessible to everybody, irrespective of the lifestyle you live, irrespective of where you are in terms of income as a person, because I think that as well speaks to the dignity of people. You know, let us all have dignified lives where we have access to health because we are humans and not because we have access to certain things.
Sure. People, I think you guys have heard, I think I've never necessarily heard anyone describe the bottom line of the research that they do in such a user-focused manner. And I think I really do appreciate how Ms. B's done that. I mean, you think about, you know, for a lot of us, you just go into the pharmacy and you pick up a pill and you move on with your life, you know, but we never think about how accessible those pills are to people other than ourselves that perhaps have access to pharmacies and cars and etc., etc. And I think that's really, I think it's a really humbling way of looking at research. And I think if anything at Let's Talk Science with Thuli, that's what we're trying to do, to show you as much as possible that the research that we do in labs really is about the people. And I know that it may seem a lot like scientists forget that, but I think it's refreshing to have Miss B here, whose work and what leads her in her work is really driven by the user themselves, which is you. And that's it for Let's Talk Science with Thuli. When we come back, we're going to speak a little bit about who she is when she's not trying to save the world and make pills really accessible and really cheap and, you know, and increase their shelf life for people. I'll see you after this.